I mean, it's charging. Should be at 100%. Okay.
Shelby Foot is up?
No. This is the one
Got a minute. The clock's fast.
Let's talk, why don't they get that clock changed, Mr. City Employee?
It is 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. We'll call the City Council meeting for the City of New Ulm to order. Item number 1, consent agenda. Councilors, what are your wishes?
I'll offer a motion to approve those.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I would note that the lodging tax has done way better than it has in the last 5 reporting years here for the month of July.
Big boost, yeah.
Yeah, so
Busy
that
month.
tells you tourism is bouncing back. It could reflect higher room rates, which is probably a partial, but that's always been the case. So that's good news.
Yes.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.1, public hearing on the 2022 MSAS improvements.
Madam President, City Councilors, just a brief background on this project. The professional service contract for this project was awarded to ISG on January 21st, 2020, and we have a approved project memorandum from MnDOT that we received on January 25th of 2021. We've held a public informational preliminary design virtual open house on April 22nd of 2021. We did that virtually. The Safety Commission considered the proposed final layout for this project at their September 2nd, 2021 meeting and recommended approval in terms of the project meeting the complete streets policy of the city. And last meeting, at the last council meeting on September 7th, the council adopted the preliminary engineer's report on this project. This project consists of the removal of the existing bituminous pavement, storm sewer modifications, grading, aggregate base, bituminous base, concrete curb and gutter, concrete sidewalks, a rec trail extension, concrete driveway pavements, bituminous surfacing and restoration, and street lighting. Hearing notices have been sent out to the adjacent property owners. And one item to note is the city's received federal funding in the amount of $1,360,772 for this project, with an anticipating bonding need of $170,097. With that information, I would suggest or recommend that we open up the public hearing and answer any questions from the public at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Stadheim. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to be heard?
Hearing none, I'll offer a resolution, waive the reading, closing the public hearing, and ordering in the 2022 MSAS improvement project and authorizing the prep and plans and specs.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Director Jorgensen, please call the roll.
Counselor Mack,
Yes.
Counselor Schultz,
Yes.
Counselor Christian,
Yes.
Counselor Warmka,
Yes.
and President Becker.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 2.2, public hearing on the final plat of Mayha's third edition.
Dave Schnober, Community Development Director. Madam Chair, members of the City Council. The platted area has a street address of 1727 and 1729 Oakwood Avenue. The property generally sits between Oakwood Avenue and Center Street and then east of Betker Road. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the final plat at their August 26, 2021 meeting. The plat involves 2 existing lots. Each of those lots has a residence on it. They share a joint property line, and that property line will be moved 20 feet to the south. And in doing so, that would allow the transfer of an existing shed from the owner of Lot 2 to the owner of Lot 1. The plat complies with city code requirements. The city attorney has recommended one condition, and it would read as follows. Approval of the final plat will be subject to the filing of a certificate of trust and affidavit of trustee signed by Jerry L. Minders and Carol A. Minders as trustees. You will note in your attachments that we do have a revised final plat. That was necessary because of some recommendations made by the city attorney following his review of the title information for the parcels of property that are involved in this plat. That review that was conducted by the city attorney will also necessitate that we revise the approving resolution as well. At one time, we had discussed the possibility of one of the lots having an adjoining parcel that they also owned and combining them into one, and they did not wish to pursue that. So that would conclude the staff report on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Schnobrick. Anyone?
Well, seeing there's no one that wants to be heard, or is there?
It's public hearing.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyone like to be heard?
Well, seeing that no one wants to be heard, I'll make a motion and close the public hearing and offer a resolution, waive the reading, approving the final plat of Maha's third edition, generally located at 1729 and 1729 Oakwood Avenue.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Director Jorgensen, please call the roll.
Counselor Mack?
Yes.
Counselor Schultz?
Yes.
Counselor Christian?
Yes.
Counselor Warmka?
Yes.
President Becker?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 3.1, reports from counselors. Summary. Thank you. Jerry. Any summaries anyone would like to share regarding recent committee or
I have none.
commission meetings?
I have none. Park and Rec did not meet this month, nor did Heritage Preservation.
I have September 8th, the Planning Commission met. We had a work session to go over a couple chapters of the new zoning, so.
Yeah, Brown County Waste met yesterday, and there's a lot of discussion. They're revamping a lot of things at the county dump. That one of the bigger ones is that they are adding a scale house,
Landfill,
sanitary
you mean?
landfill.
Yeah,
Yes, sorry, yes, sanitary landfill. But yes, they're adding a waste station. But right now they're in the preliminary stages of getting new quotes and bids on the actual waste scale house itself. So nice improvements being made out there, though.
Good. Thank you, counselors. Item number 4.1, oral presentation from representative of Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities.
Hello, getting my PowerPoint. Looks like we're up, our technology's working, so, well, thank you. My name is Shane Zart. I'm with the firm Flaherty and Hood and represent the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. So a pleasure to be here to give an update, and we like to do this once a year. I don't think we did last year. We did some of them virtually, some of them we had to skip entirely, so it's great to be back here with you. And as many of you know, I also work with the Highway 14 Partnership. So you may have seen me in either of those contexts before, but here tonight to give an update on CGMC, the session that was, and what we're up to these days. So, but just the quick reminder or introduction, depending on your familiarity with CGMC. But CGMC is 109 member cities, all outside of the 7-county metro area. The organization lobbies on behalf of those members at the state capitol in 5 key areas: LGA property taxes, economic development, annexation, land use, transportation, and environment and energy, especially on water, wastewater quality issues. And then labor and employment is also an area in which we provide services to member cities as well. So, you know, as I mentioned, it's been a while since we've seen each other, especially in person. And usually we recap the legislative session that recently concluded. And in this case, it feels like we're recapping about 2 years, or we're recapping about 2 years worth of legislating. Feels like 20 years or more. But as many of you know, due to the pandemic, the legislature was in session for 18 straight months, for all or part of 18 straight months due to the recurring special sessions that we had had, and the conclusion of, and 2 regular sessions mixed in there as well. The CGMC during that entire time was actively engaged on, especially on some big ticket items like bonding, dispersal of federal funds, especially the CARES Act money, where there were less direction from the federal government to the state on how to distribute those. In the meantime, we had an election. In the middle of this 18 straight months of special sessions, didn't ultimately impact control of either chamber of the legislature, but again, the pandemic, also protests and things going on in the metro area, and certainly drove the governor's emergency powers to the forefront of the discussion, and police reform, and that's kind of a lot of the big picture backdrop of the issues that we were looking at. But legislating during the pandemic, like anyone's job, I think, certainly looked a lot different. And here's a few of us on screens doing either presentations or testifying. I think they got me there with still, before I had cut my hair during the pandemic, testifying on an economic development bill. But the Capitol was entirely closed to the public and reopened partially in June of 2021, but the Senate and House buildings are still largely locked down. No in-person committee meetings, very few, if any, legislator meetings. So lobbying looked a lot different than the shaking hands and having meetings and talking to your legislators in person. And CGMC, like everyone, kind of had to adapt to that new normal. So in order to kind of keep things focused on our issues, we tried a number of new things, one of which was Advocacy Weeks, a whole week where we're focusing on one issue, writing guest columns, pushing out messages to Greater Minnesota media and media throughout the state. Here's one example of a headline that garnered with our president, Mayor Greg Zilka of Little Falls. But LGA, water, wastewater funding, childcare, housing are some of the issues that we focused on. Social media campaigns, we did an LGA video, and then CGMC coordinated large group meetings with legislators and organizing individual member cities to meet with legislators. All things to just kind of adapt to this new world. How do you do one of the most in-person businesses there is, lobbying and lawmaking in a remote setting? And we'll talk about each of those issues a little more. But first, some of our top goals coming into the 2021 session. Well, our first and foremost, again, a lot of things changed in the meantime here, but we entered the 2021 session with the state looking at a very large general fund budget deficit. So our number one priority was protecting local government aid. I know that's probably top of mind because we're at budget season anyway here. So LGA, pay LGA in full and on time, that was our refrain. There was a bonding bill that felt like took an eternity to pass, but finally did in 2020, or in October of 2020. We were still hoping that the legislature would pass a supplemental bonding bill this past session. They're still working on that. We'll call that one incomplete. And then some individual issues. Child care funding, we'll touch on a couple of these on a future slide, and I'll be very quick tonight to respect your time. But city streets, I think I'll stop there because you were approving MSA project or discussing one just now. Increasing that pot of money is always a priority of ours, and for our cities, our friends in cities under 5,000 in population, getting them a dedicated funding source from state revenues is always a priority. So this is just to kind of put some specifics and set some context for what we were facing heading into the 2021 session. We went from a small, that yellow bar on the left is 2020, 2021, what we were facing before the pandemic, and what we were expecting. We were entering the 2022 budget session with 2021 session when you budget for the 2022 session, is how I should clarify that, I suppose, but a $1.2 billion deficit. So LGA in full and on time. I already mentioned that slogan, but this was a threat that we take very seriously. I know some of you have been around in city government or even on the council since the Great Recession. Remember the days of unallotment and those LGA cuts that cut a lot of cities very deeply in a time that the economy was struggling across the entire state and across the entire country. That was our number one priority, was pushing back against possible cuts like that. Our approach was leave nothing to chance. We had legislators and the governor who were saying, LGA, if we ever went that route, would be a last resort. But we, of course, leaving nothing to chance, never took anything for granted and continued to advocate like our backs were against the wall on LGA, including organizing a number of member cities. This folds into what were we having to do differently? Well, videos, social media pushes, any way to get in front of a legislator on an issue was the route that we took. Now, I would like to think, and I think that we can claim some partial credit for the CGMC was the reason that that LGA cuts to the extent they have been in previous budget deficits were on the table, that this year legislators and the governor were wary to even go there and to say and claim credit, say where the reason they didn't happen. The biggest factor was that a lot of things changed. The economy started to reopen. We started to see the benefits of that in the state's coffers, and large federal aid packages that passed also bolstered the state's finances to the extent that kind of took LGA cuts off the table. February 2021, the revised budget forecast after we started to reopen some things, after the federal government had passed its most recent large aid package, projected a surplus of $1.5 billion. So that major swing, LGA kind of was deemed safe in that. Both the state and local governments got some additional funds. I'm sure that's a big part of your discussions, how to spend those ARP funds and maximize the use of those. But the legislature did do some tweaking around the edges on LGA, passing some small funding. That's mostly to keep some other cities who otherwise the formula should say might be going backwards, to keep them from going backwards. But LGA is going to remain an active discussion. I think a couple of you were at our summer conference in Alexandria, had the tax chairs, the House and Senate tax chairs on a panel, and each of them, I think for different reasons, thought, you know what, it might be time to revisit that LGA formula. And I think we made it clear to them that more money is important and we need to be central in that conversation. So moving quickly through a bunch of issues, and I'll pause for questions at the end, but childcare has been a major focus of our organization in recent years. Childcare and housing, I think, to mention the two together, as we travel the state, as we work with our member cities to identify priority issues and emerging issues, those are two that we've heard more than any others have been inhibitors of economic development, or major workforce challenges. 5-6 years ago, we were not in the business of advocating on childcare, and I know there are a lot of cities who are saying we don't want to be in the business of childcare, but we're finding that we have to because it's such an inhibitor of our ability to grow and develop workforce. So we worked on a few things in particular this session. One was funding for the 6 Minnesota Initiative Foundations, who've been doing a lot of work on training providers, bringing new providers into the marketplace, providers of childcare, both home-based and center-based, advocated for funding for a deed childcare program. We've been successful the last couple sessions in getting some funding for that program, and at least 50% of those dollars are earmarked. They have to go to greater Minnesota communities. Funds for redevelopment in greater Minnesota. Child care facilities are an eligible use of some of the just general redevelopment funds that the state allocated for development throughout the state. And child care facility funds from the Department of Human Services, they got an allocation of federal funds that can be used for upgrading child care facilities throughout the state. And often when we talk about what those are used for, facilities grants and that, often you can think of both center-based and home-based. Can we make some funding available to help folks bring either a center or their home up to code? Childcare is, as we all know, not a high-margin business. So anything I think that the state can do, that others can do to make it more affordable to provide it has been a benefit to many of our communities. Housing, I think, remains a vexing problem throughout the state. Like I said, childcare and housing are often mentioned hand in hand as two of the number one and two, I suppose, challenges for communities that looking to develop. We've, over time, developed a kind of package of housing, both incentives for developers, grant programs to try to bolster workforce housing and focus on what are the types of housing that greater Minnesota communities need to help their communities grow and thrive. This year, there's $4 million that were allocated for the Greater Minnesota Workforce Housing Program. On a number of other areas, I think that housing is a work in progress and an issue that is so complex. I think a lot of legislators are struggling to get their hands around it and get their hands around some of the distinctions between the issues that are facing the metro area and Greater Minnesota. So touching on just a few quick ones, and then I'll pause for questions and get out of your hair here. But I want to touch on broadband very briefly, because there was some record funding this year put into the border-to-border broadband grant program. And I think that right now there's kind of a moment of opportunity on broadband. This funding derives from the state's allocation of American Rescue Plan dollars through the federal government's stimulus package. This is the largest contribution that the state has ever made to this program. I know that American Rescue Plan funds that have been allocated to cities, counties, many others are looking at using those to bolster broadband throughout the state. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's still a lot of areas of our state that lag behind broadband speed goals, especially the aspirational goals that shouldn't be so aspirational, but our 2026 broadband speed goals. So hopefully this is a moment of opportunity that can help advance a number of projects. And I'm going to touch on a couple issues very quickly on our water quality work. PFAS, or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. I'm sure there's somebody in the crowd or watching online that can tell me how I mispronounced that. But these are kind of invasive forever chemicals that we're finding more and more cities are facing issues with. Removing these currently from drinking water is extremely expensive. Removing them from wastewater is impossible. The technology, or nearly impossible. The technology does not exist to do that effectively. So the CGMC partnered with some other organizations and came up with a municipal source reduction initiative to help tackle at least initially some of the challenges that we're facing with these. $600,000 would put behind that effort. That effort will help us identify some strategies, sources of that. And the CGMC, unfortunately at times we end up playing defense as well. And there was some legislation floating around out there that would have imposed liability on cities in certain circumstances for these substances being in the water and their ability to treat them. And I'm happy to say we successfully fought some of that back. Chloride and PSIG. So chloride, this is another kind of falls in the emerging issues, and you can let me know too how this is impacting New Ulm, but more than 100 cities may face chloride limits in their permits. The CGMC worked with other organizations to help secure funding for chloride source control reduction from the Environmental and Natural Resources Trust Fund. But again, this is an emerging issue that is going to impact a number of cities. PSIG, of course, the state loves acronyms. Those are point source implementation grants. There was some money allocated to those. I will give that one an incomplete grade here too, because a large source of that program's funding every year is from the bonding bill. So we're hoping that a large bonding bill includes a number of funds for those to help cities upgrade their water treatment facilities as well. So we have others, and Chris, I'll have to send you this. I have at the bottom there, CR report. We have a list of emerging issues on water, wastewater. We could spend all night on that. I need to get out of your hair here. So bonding, our big headline here is can't stop, won't stop. The bill that passed in October of 2020 contained a lot of good things. $8.2 million for Greater Minnesota Business Development Public Infrastructure. That's one of our favorite economic development programs the state has for Greater Minnesota only. $269 million for water infrastructure. Some of those programs, that was a record, but all constantly kind of chasing those issues as infrastructure around the state continues to age. There were a number of things in there for housing programs, local bridges, local roads, but that bill, in many ways, passing was overdue, I guess I would say, since in 2019 we didn't have a bonding bill. 2020 was a very large bonding bill, had a lot of good things, but without one passing this past session, then there will be a lot of work to do in the coming session in 2022. So some of our priorities in there, I've mentioned a number of these, some of the same ones you saw in the last round, more money for those. And the one thing I want to flag that I haven't said yet is one thing that we're monitoring closely is just the political dynamics at the session, at the Capitol, between the House, Senate. The House this year put out a bonding bill, their proposal, that was focused, we'd say, in large part on metro area needs, more so than we've seen in the past. Regardless of who's in charge of the legislature, bonding has been an area where geographic balance in investments has been a significant priority, and something that we're going to be actively involved in any final outcome, in ensuring that it's geographically balanced. So, looking ahead, I think the big thing we want you to know, we've already been laying the groundwork for a successful session. I think, I mentioned, a couple of you saw that, some of that at our conference, bringing in legislators, bringing in the governor to meet directly with our city officials. LGA, I already mentioned, we're very much on top of that one, in any potential revisions to that formula or funding. Large bonding bill will be a top priority, and redistricting is something we'll be monitoring closely. After now that the census is final, the state has to redistrict, and everyone is back on the ballot. So it's the governor's up for re-election, the House is up for re-election, they're up every 2 years anyway, but the Senate is the big thing, because of redistricting, even though they have 4-year terms and they just were elected 2 years ago, all of them have to run again because we're redrawing the district line. So everybody's up for their jobs this coming election. So just want to highlight a couple of events here. Our fall conference will be in Wilmer in November, the 18th and 19th of November. And then March 2nd of 2022 will be our Legislative Action Day in St. Paul. And that's when we love to have all of our city officials descend on the Capitol and meet directly with legislators and give them a piece of our mind and tell them what's important to Greater Minnesota. So we'd love to have you at either of those. And both of those, at least for now, planning to have in person, and we'll see where the world takes us between now and March especially, I suppose. So that's where I'll leave it. I told Chris, we always try to, as an organization, working with 100 cities on so many issues, we always try to be brief. We rarely do a good job at it. So I hope at least some of it was interesting. I know a lot of it's important, and I hope I didn't keep too much of your time here. But and there's a number of places you can find us up on the screen as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick comment that our local EDA is making childcare in our community a #1 priority this year.
Yep.
So you're right on top of some of these things that I saw come across the screen. So anything you can do to help us, we'll gladly listen.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and just that's great to hear, and I think that one of the things that we've been encouraged by is that I do feel like a lot of legislators have started to focus on childcare, and in particular on the differences between how it impacts the metro and Greater Minnesota. And the only real comment I'll make there is one of my colleagues has kind of come to describe one of the differences this way is, it's definitely an issue in the metro area too, but often it's an affordability issue in the metro area. Where in Greater Minnesota, it's certainly an affordability issue too, but we find in a lot of communities it's not available at any price. There just are not enough providers. We've lost so many of them, and so many barriers to entry for new ones that we're focused on all angles, and I think that message has started to get through.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
Item number 5.1, B&L Bar Alley Closure, Oktoberfest Celebration.
I'll offer the resolution, waive the reading to temporarily close the alley adjacent to the establishment for Oktoberfest celebrations on Friday at 5 p.m. to Sunday at 10 a.m., October 1, 2, 3, 2021, and October 8th, 9, and 10, 2021, and authorize the extension of the B&L Bar liquor license into the alley closed area, requesting dates subject to conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Director Jorgensen, please call the roll.
Counselor Mack?
Yes.
Counselor Schultz?
Yes.
Counselor Christian?
Yes.
Counselor Warmka? Yes. President Becker?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 5.2, allocate parking stall in municipal lot for new transformer.
Commission, Council President, Councilors, before you, you have a request to relinquish one parking stall in the city-owned parking lot on 2nd and German Street. The Public Utilities received a request to upgrade the electrical service for the Inspired Bridal Event Center, and so we need to put another transformer in that location. And this would be similar to what we did out when we did the electric charging station. So just one spot would be removed from the overall parking out there. And you can see on the map.
Is there any cost borne by the people that benefit from this?
I'm sure there's connection fees, and that's all through the utility.
I'll approve to allocate the use of one parking stall, municipal lot located 2nd North and German Streets for additional 3-phase transformer to accommodate electrical service to the Inspire Event Center.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5.3, hardship deferral for the 2022 installment due for 2018 USA improvements.
President and councilors, this is a request, actually the third year in a row, this request has been made by this property owner. They meet all of the requirements of the deferral, so it's just recommended to approve it.
Okay.
I'll offer a resolution to waive the reading approving the hardship deferral for the 2022 installment of the $1,389.12 for the 2018 improvement charges for the property owner at 1116 3rd North Street in New Ulm.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Director Jorgensen, please call the roll.
Counselor Mack?
Yes.
Counselor Schultz?
Yes.
Counselor Christian?
Yes.
Counselor Warmka?
Yes.
President Becker?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 5.4, New Ulm Fire Department Relief Association Board of Directors fees.
Madam President, City Councilors, Joseph Stadheim, New Ulm Fire Department Relief Association Secretary. Before you today, the Board of Directors and the Relief Association as a whole has recommended unanimously that the director fee for the President, Secretary, and Treasurer are each increased by $100 per year to the totals of $1,900 per year for President and $2,700 per year for both the Secretary and Treasurer. The last increase for the directors went into effect on January 1st of 2018, and at this time we're asking for a modest increase to the fees for those positions.
Thank you.
Pretty typical that it's every 3 years.
We really don't have a set schedule. It's kind of a item we bring up every year, and the board felt it was appropriate this year to ask for the increase.
I'll motion to approve the Board of Directors fee increases for the New Ulm Fire Department Relief Association to $1,900 per year for the President and $2,007 per year for each the Secretary and Treasurer to be effective January 1, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5.5, public hearing set for 2020 utility street and alley improvements, Group 1.
Thank you, Madam President, City Councilors. This is really just the next step in the process. We'll set the public hearing and approve the assessments today, and then have the public hearing on October 19th for the final assessment rolls for the 2020 USA project.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the final assessment rolls for the 2020 utility street and alley improvements, Group 1 project, and set the date for a public hearing for Tuesday, October 19th, 2021 at 4:30 p.m.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 5.6, development agreement with Streamsedge Properties LLC.
Okay, Streamsedge Properties is a holding company for property and land purchases by Dayton Freight Lines. Dayton is a privately owned trucking firm. The city entered into a purchase agreement with this firm on February 8th, 2021 for the property legally described as Lot 1, Block 1, Airport Industrial Park's 3rd edition. The street address is 2215 Jacobs Street. The amount of property to be sold is 6.85 acres, and the purchase price would be $164,057. A condition to the sale of the property requires Streamsedge and the city to enter into a development agreement. A development agreement is a fairly standard requirement with either land acquisition or with the provision of city assistance to a company. The development agreement covers issues associated with the development of the property and in particular infrastructure improvements that are made on adjoining streets. Construction of this project is slated for 2023 and the installation of public improvements would take place in 2022. Public improvements will be taking place on Thompson and on Jacob Street. The development agreement consists of 8 sections. The one section that I would just like to briefly talk about is Section 5, that's public improvements and special assessments. In that section, we have established a special assessment amount of $230,000 that would be paid according to the city's standard assessment policies. And that particular dollar fee was calculated by the city engineer and is based on projected construction costs. The closing on the property is scheduled for September 30th, so it's coming up shortly. I would note that the city attorney has been actively engaged with staff in preparing the development agreement. That would conclude the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Schnobrick.
I'm going to go ahead and offer the resolution, waive the reading, approving the development agreement with Streamsedge Properties LLC for the property legally described as Lot 1, Block 1, Airport Industrial Park, 3rd edition, and located at 2215 Jacob Street, and authorize the city manager and finance director to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Director Jorgensen, please call the roll.
Counselor Mack?
Yes.
Counselor Schultz?
Yes.
Counselor Christian?
Yes.
Counselor Warmka?
Yes.
President Becker?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 5.7, Police Department Squad Car and Canine Equipment.
Hi, Council President, members of the council. I'm Dave Borker, Chief of Police for the City of New Ulm. And I'm coming before you with a request for permission to purchase a 2020 Chevy Tahoe. Has a police package, has accessories to include a watch guard body camera, squad camera. The purchase would be from the city of Painesville. Would be in the amount of $47,000. It was a budgeted item. So far, I budgeted for next year. I needed a replacement with a Canine unit, or I felt that there was a need for that. Kind of a unique opportunity opened up. Essentially, right now we're having a chip shortage, supply chain issues regarding squad cars. In fact, I won't be able to order a squad car next year due to that chip shortage. They're not accepting bids for government contracts or government bids with squad cars. So it kind of puts us in a tough situation. The unique opportunity came up. City of Painesville dissolved their Canine program simply because they had an officer that transferred to another department, accepted another job, and only certified officer that they have for a canine small department, and for that reason, they felt they needed to dissolve chose to dissolve their canine program. So had a unique opportunity. Had the squad car inspected, the equipment inspected. It's used. It's a 2020 Tahoe with fairly low miles, still on a warranty, a little over 8,300 miles on it. And the equipment overall, the oldest thing on it is the radar unit. Other than that, it's relatively new equipment. So again, it was kind of a good opportunity. We estimated the equipment, again, buying new. This is slightly used, but we estimated it around $65,000.
One question I have for the chief, and I know you wrote this in there, so we can actually take the 52,000 out of next year's budget?
Correct. What I'd like to do, with your permission, is that I would be using DUI forfeiture funds, which are
Okay.
reserve funds, for this purchase, because it's in 2021, and I hadn't budgeted for 2021.
No, I'm fine
Nicole,
with
we can
that.
do that as far as tonight when we were talking about our budget.
As far as buying the squad car that's in the budget for next year,
Right, and the amount of
that
money we'll
really,
save
are
for
we going to
next year.
take that out?
Yes. Or that would be my recommendation.
Right. From what I'm reading on this, yeah, we won't have to do it. I'm fine with it. I'll authorize the New Ulm Police Department to purchase one 2020 Chevrolet Tahoe four-wheel drive police package squad with a canine equipment and other squad use car accessories to include radar unit, watch guard, squad camera, and the city of Painesville, from the city of Painesville, in the amount of $47,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Item number 5.8, preliminary City of New Ulm 2022 budget.
Okay, President Becker and councilors, you've had a couple of opportunities to see these at some work sessions, but I will go through the slides and then open it up to discussion. So, looking at this first slide, this just hits on the LGA, which, as Shane said, is still in place and actually went up $28,000 for the year. So that's always good. It's a huge part of our budget. LGA is actually like 20% of our revenues, so it would be a huge, huge impact on us if we had to find another way to make up that revenue. And looking at the next slide, this just kind of hits on the history of the expenses and the levels we've been at over the last several years. You can see 2017 was an extremely high year for expenses. I believe that was the year we finally closed on the Armory land. So that was huge, and I think there was a couple other big things in there that year. Looking at this total expenses are up $1.1 million, or 5.96% over last year. And I'll hit on some of those expenses as we go forward. And then the revenues are also up $287,000, and that is largely due to the fact that Park and Rec will be fully functional again next year. So that was helpful in this year's budget as well. This slide just kind of goes through real briefly the history of the tax levy, where we've been, and its impact on the tax rate. This year's levy, as of right now, without taking out the $52,000, is going up 6.45% right now. That will have an increase on the tax rate of about 3.65%. And then the debt levy does go down $61,000 due to the favorable bond sale that we just had. And just to point out, since 2015, that debt levy has decreased $526,000. So we've done some good in paying some debt off early and refunding when we can and saving interest. So hitting on what is in the budget, the health insurance premiums, of course, go up every year. There's not a lot that we can do about that. As of right now, we have a 3.5% increase budgeted. It may be slightly more. We're not sure where that's going to land at this point. There is a COLA adjustment and some position changes that we reviewed at the last work session regarding the assistant city manager and IT. That hits an increase on the wages for the year. The COLA adjustment as I said, is in there. I know there's union negotiations coming up, so we don't have a concrete number in there, but we do have a number in there that should be comfortable to help cover where we land. Property and workers' compensation insurance goes up every year. The league recommends different amounts for the different types of insurance. This year, they recommended a 10 to 20% increase for police departments with the workers' comp. We stuck with about a 10%. We usually fall in that mid-range with them. Sinking fund contributions are set at a total of $685,000. That includes $195,000 for city facilities, $195,000 for fire equipment, and $100,000 for capital improvement, as well as establishing a police equipment revolving fund, one for Herman the German, so we can make some of those repairs in the future, and then also establishing a park and rec fitness equipment replacement fund. And then it is the third and final year of that $25,000 that we've been setting aside for the battery building replacement. To get to the 645% increase, I did budget an $80,000 use of general fund balance. That will seat us at about, depending on how this year ends, probably about a 52%, give or take a little bit, fund balance percent at the end of 2022. So still comfortably over that 50% recommended. And then the budget also is going to use $249,000 of sinking funds. That will help repair the library roof, replace their HVAC, and then make some repairs on some park and rec shelters and the fountain in German Park. Some of the other items that are in the budget, I know you've seen this list a couple times already, is the sound and vibration study, the bus route of $25,000, and we have no way of knowing what ridership will be there, but that could impact that number next year and in the future. The more rides we have, the lower that number will be. The Heart of New Ulm contract is currently in the budget at $25,000. The Christmas decorations at $10,000. The training budget I did lower from $35,000 to $30,000. Just in general, took it off the top, so we'll see where we land there, and that may not have a huge impact if everything continues to be virtual. There's $15,000 in there for police uniforms. That will replace 3 vests for the emergency response unit members. Engineering equipment, that's in there to replace some equipment that is outdated and no longer supported. And then park planning, we have $15,000 in there. And I believe that will be used mostly for Cottonwood probably planning. And then $18,000 in there for North Park improvements to the batting cages. Then looking at some of those other organizations that we have contributions set aside for in the budget at this point, I made a few changes, so as we go through the list, you'll see those. The Sister Cities is still in there at $3,700, and that program largely helps to cover the exchange program. And then the Human Rights Commission, they had requested $8,750. I dropped that to $6,050 for the year. They typically use less than $3,000 a year, so I felt comfortable dropping that. I don't know if they have more planned to use that for the year. I know human rights is a huge issue, of course, right now. The Fairgrounds Association, they requested $6,000. I dropped that to $4,000, which is what we have in the 2021 budget. So matching that continued contribution. The Concord Singers requested $6,000. I left that in there at $6,000. And then for festivals, Bavarian Blast and Herman Fest, each got $3,000 and $15,000 respectively. That's what we've given for several years to each of those organizations. The Municipal Band is in there for $15,000. That has also been a constant. They got $11,000 up until 2014 when it was increased to $15,000. And based on the request, that is for supports 55 members in the band with 18 rehearsals and 11 concerts. The New Ulm Battery is in there for $21,000. That covers their insurance, a couple of parades, the Thunder in the Valley costs, and the alarm system in their building. That was most of what that covers. And then the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, $1,500 has been our ongoing contribution for several years. The Small Business Development Center, they requested 2,000, we did take that out. And then the Wanda Gog House, $1,650. I left that in, that's what it's been for the last few years. Then the Lind House requested for the first time since 2012, they requested $5,000. I dropped it to $1,650 just to be level with the Wanda Gog House. So that is the total for those. So those total, and it cuts that off. With what's in the budget right now, just over $79,000. So just shy of 1% of that levy increase. Here you can see more what that levy, how it impacts the taxpayers. The tax capacity did only go up 1.78%, so it wasn't a huge increase by any means for the year. So looking at that, a 6.45% change in the levy will change our tax rate by 3.65%. So it brings it from 79.09% to 82.74%. And that would have, on the average home, have about a $55 annual impact on their taxes for the cities. So tonight, obviously, we'll set the preliminary level. That needs to be done before September 28th, actually September 30th. And then we'll continue to look at the budget between now and December and see if there's any other changes that can be made. At this point, we will not be able to increase the levy. It can only go down. So we can rearrange things and take things out. We can't add anything. And then sometime between November 11th and 24th, the county will send out their tax statements to taxpayers, and then that will have the hearing date on there. So December 7th will be the truth and taxation hearing. It can continue the week later if needed. And then in December, we'll set that final levy. So that is all I have.
That's 65,000 from the police department. We could take that off now, or we could take it off later. Take it off now, we drop down to about 6%, right? Actually, a little less than that,
I can tell you if you give me a second.
right?
83,000 drops, yeah, a whole percent, so about 2/3 of that.
And then, Nicole, you had on there that is the county's tax capacity. You had
Yep.
1 point, okay, so you do have that data now.
Yep.
Okay, I was hoping it would be a little higher, but.
So was I.
I would recommend that we do that. That would be probably end up being, what, 5.8, 5.9,
That would bring us down to 5.82.
5.82? I know the county's set theirs today at 8.1.
I did have a question on the SBDC funding. Why that was that just a request or?
That's an annual request that we get every year from the Small Business Development Center. And this year, I don't feel we should give that to them. They haven't provided the level of service, and the EDA is in contract with them too. So
Okay.
to give them money.
So just not duplicating efforts here.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
My only other comment is on the Lind House. I know that they need shingles horrifically bad. If you walk by there, it's really bad. And they're wood shingles because they want to keep it unique, so they're very expensive. And I'm sure that's probably why they have a $5,000 request coming in. And not that Wanda Gog House doesn't have projects as well, but they're not asking for that much. On the opposite end, I'd like to see Lind House get a little more.
Well, they haven't received anything since 2012, I think is what she recorded. You know, and they've got a major project because it's an historic building and they got the
More than just
guidelines.
shingles, but I know that's a kind of a real, we need to get it done project. So if we were to give them that 5, how does that look then?
With taking out the squad car or leaving the squad car in?
Say that again?
Take
With-
the squad car out
Yeah.
and
Oh,
then
for sure. Okay.
up the Lind House to 5.
Probably right at 5.9 or 6 then.
Yeah, probably is pretty close.
And then we're at 5.86.
What's that again?
5.86.
All right with that.
I'm okay with that.
I can live with that.
I'm okay. Agreed.
Thank you, Nicole. We get a new number, though, for the resolution.
Oh, yeah, I
If
suppose.
you help me with the numbers, I'll make the
Yeah,
motion.
yeah, same.
It's
resolution.
easier said than done. Find the right spreadsheet. Like having everyone watch you type.
I could probably read it as it is and then talk about the changes.
I think we've done that in the past where you just give me the leeway to adjust it for that amount, but
Like, note the specifics.
What's that?
Can we note the specifics of what we would be removing and adding in? And then she won't be under pressure there.
All right, I'll give that a try. I'll offer a resolution, waive the reading, accepting the preliminary 2022 budget for the city of New Ulm with a total appropriations of $22,998,503 and a maximum property level of $8,799,248, and setting the public hearing date of December 7th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And the continuation of the public hearing for December 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. if needed, to consider the 22 budget with the following exceptions: that the Lind House would receive their original request at $5,000, and that we would eliminate $65,000. Is that the number we want from the city law enforcement? Is that right, Dave?
52,000.
52.
52?
52,000, and then that other amount was actually 50,000 for next year's budget. That was from the DUI forfeiture,
Okay.
but on the actual levy, it was 52,343.
52,343.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I like that you've not touched the, what I call cultural events, the Concord Singers, the Municipal Band, things of that nature. And I'm pretty attuned to being a grandpa these days. And if we start cutting away on little things like that, things which, 0.05%, it's just, it's going to take something significant away without a significant saving. So I'm glad that we've decided to keep them.
I agree.
Thanks, Mayor. A motion and a second. Any more discussion? Director Jorgensen, please call the roll.
I missed the second. Who said?
I did.
Counselor Matt?
Yes.
Counselor Schultz?
Yes.
Counselor Christian?
Yes.
Counselor Warmka?
Yes.
President Becker?
Yes, motion carries. With no additional business, this meeting is adjourned with a work session.